Welcome to Spanglish Friends, the podcast for true beginner Spanish learners.
Hola amigos, I'm Val, your co-host and experienced Spanish teacher from Venezuela.
And I'm Em, your Australian co-host who's been learning Spanish for 10 years.
Our goal is simple, to get you confident listening and speaking in beginner Spanish with content you'll actually use in real-life conversations.
Join the Spanish Friends community by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts and following us on social media at Spanglish_friends. Let's get started.
Comencemos.
Hola, Spanglish friends.
Buenos días, hola, hola, ¿cómo están amigos? How are you all? And bienvenidos al episodio 12. Welcome to episode 12.
Yes, and a big welcome if this is your first time tuning into our show. Welcome to the Spanglish Friends community. Today's episode, we're going to be diving into a topic that is just so topical for beginner Spanish learners, and that is how to say to be, including things like I am, you are, or she, he is in Spanish.
Yes, we briefly went over this in episode 9 when we introduced the different ways you can start describing things with adjective in Spanish with the verb ser, which means to be in English. Today, amigos, we are going to blow your minds because there are actually two ways to say to be in Spanish.
That's right. And we are going to be going over estar today. Estar is the other verb you need to know, which means to be alongside ser. And we're going to be teaching you quick tricks to remember which of these two verbs, ser or estar, you need to use depending on the context as a beginner learner.
Exactly. So excited for this episode. But before we jump into things, this week's Spanglish Friends shout out goes to Elliette from Australia, who got involved in both our episode 6 and our episode 7 challenges. Well done, Elliette. She did a great job of putting into practice the tips we learned to tell if a noun, remember, a person, place, or thing is masculine or feminine. Well done, and thank you for getting involved.
Now, if you want to be included in a future shout out, make sure you stick around to the end of today's episode to get involved in our reto, our challenge of the week.
Each lesson, we want to tell you exactly what you'll get out of investing your time listening to us.
That's right. So by the end of today's episode, you're going to be able to answer these 3 questions, Spanglish friends. Question number 1, what is the verb estar and how do you conjugate this verb? Number 2, what are the 2 main reasons as a beginner that you would use estar? And what are the 2 main reasons as a beginner that you would use the verb ser?
Awesome. So, first thing, let's introduce the verb estar, which means to be in Spanish. So, a quick recap. If we go back to episode 9, we taught you how ser is the verb to be in Spanish. In English, we don't say I be, you be, and he be or she be. No, we say I am, you are, and she is, he is, right? Well, in Spanish, works the same. We need to conjugate the verb ser and say yo soy, which means I am, tú eres, you are, ella es, she is, or él es, he is. So if you haven't tuned into our episode 9, we definitely recommend you to go back, listen to it, and then tune back into today's episode. So you have all this context.
Awesome. So, Prof. Val, how do we say I am, you are, or she is, he is in Spanish using the verb estar, which we now have discovered also means to be?
This brings us to the first question of the day. How do we conjugate the verb estar, right? The basic conjugations are yo estoy, which means I am, tú estás, which means you are, or ella está, which means she is, or él está, which means he is.
And the fun fact is, Spanglish friends, you might have already been using the verb estar without knowing it. So cast your minds back to, for example, episode 3, where we learnt how to introduce ourselves in Spanish. Profe Val, our teacher Val, asked me, ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Which means, how are you?
That's right. And I replied with yo estoy bien, which translated to I am well. Yo estoy and tú estás are two conjugations of the verb estar. Estoy and estás are the conjugations of I am, yo estoy, and you are, tú estás.
That's right. And this brings us to our second question of the day, which is, okay, we understand now that there are two versions of the verb to be. We know there is ser and estás. We know the conjugations now of ser and estás. How do we know, Profe Val, when we need to use estar versus ser?
That's a good question, Em. So we are going to teach you firstly our new verb and friend, estar. What are the two main reasons as a beginner that you would use the verb estar? And Spanglish friends, I know that if you translate these two verbs to English, they mean the same. They mean to be, okay? But in this case, let's try it to see them from the Spanish perspective, which is these two verbs, they serve different purposes. You'll see it, we are going to show you. And because of this, we consider them in Spanish two very different verbs, all right? You are going to learn the main reasons you'd use each verb, starting with estar.
Right. And the first reason you would use estar is to talk about how you're feeling or ask someone how they're feeling, aka our emotions. So to ask someone how they are in Spanish, back before we use the example, ¿Cómo estás? Which is, how are you? And you reply with things like, estoy bien, I'm good, I'm all right.
Or you could say, estoy feliz, I am happy. All emotions, you would use the verb estar.
Perfect. That's our first use of estar as beginners that we need to know. The second reason we need to know is to ask for directions or to ask for the location of something.
That's right. This is our second reason why you would use estar. For example, if you wanted to ask someone where is the park, you could ask, ¿Dónde está el parque? ¿Dónde está el parque? Let's break it down. ¿Dónde means where. Está, we know, means is. It's the conjugation of estar. We can also use it for inanimate object. And el parque means the park.
And you could also ask someone where they are. So, for example, ¿Estás en el parque? ¿Estás en el parque? Which means, are you in the park? Estás means are you? En means in. And we know el parque means the park because it's a masculine thing, el parque. So, ¿estás en el parque? Are you in the park?
Spanglish friends, this brings us to our third and final question of the day, which is, what are the two main ways you would use ser as a beginner speaker?
Yes, the other verb which means to be. What are the differences? So, the first reason that you would use ser instead of estar is to talk about one's identity. So, this includes where are you from? Your profession. For example, yo soy australiana. Yo soy australiana, which means I am Australian. And I could say, y tú eres venezolana. You are Venezuelan, Val.
Exactamente, that's right. Or I could say, yo soy profesora de español. Remember, if we want to also talk about our professions, like I'm a teacher, this is my job, you could also say it using the verb ser. For example, yo soy profesora de español. I am a Spanish teacher. This is my job. This is my profession.
That's right. It's part of your identity of who you are. And I could also say things like we did in episode 9 to describe more things about me, like yo soy alta. Yo soy alta, which means I am tall. I'm a tall person. I could say to Val, tú eres muy inteligente. Tú eres means you are. That's the conjugation of ser for you are. Muy meaning very, and inteligente meaning intelligent. I'm describing Val's characteristics, her identity.
Exactly. The second reason you would use ser as a beginner is to talk about time and days. For example, if you want to say what time is it or what day of the week is it, you can definitely use verb ser.
That's right. For example, if you're wanting to ask someone what time is it, you would say ¿Qué hora es? ¿Qué hora es? ¿Qué means what? Hora is the word for hour, and es means is. So literally translated, it's what hour is, but in Spanish, that means what time is it?
The key to telling the time, amigos, is if it is 1 o'clock, the way you say it is es la una. Es la una. See the es from the verb ser, es la, okay, for inanimate objects in this case. Then for all other times, we say son las, and then the number. So if we want to say it's 2 o'clock, we need to say son las dos, or 3 o'clock. We need to say son las tres, etc.
Yes. So don't worry, Spanglish friends. We're going to do more episodes in the future, deep diving into ser and estar. But we just want to give you the most basic, simple uses and conjugations at this stage. We'll do another episode on things like time, how do you say things like quarter past, half past, etc. But this is what you need to know at a higher level. For 1 o'clock, you say es la una. For all the other times, you say son las plus the numbers, like dos, tres, etc. And if you haven't reviewed the numbers, you can go listen to episode 10 to learn how to count to 100 in Spanish.
Exactly. In the meantime, friends, we want to teach you the 3 main conjugations for the verb ser, okay? And then in the coming episodes, we can go deeper into the other conjugations. And we can also say what day of the week it is using es from the verb ser. For example, if I want to say today is Saturday, I can say hoy es sábado. Hoy, today, is sábado, Saturday. We will do another episode covering the days of the week in the future, so don't worry.
Yes, but now you know, Spanglish friends, in summary, the main differences between using the verb ser and the verb estar as a beginner that you need to know. So let's quickly recap. The verb estar, which means to be, the main 2 uses you need to know are number 1, to describe emotions, i.e. to ask people, how are you? For example, ¿cómo estás? Or to ask for directions. For example, ¿dónde está el parque? Where is the park? In contrast with the verb ser, which also means to be, the main 2 uses you need to know as a beginner is firstly 1, to describe someone's identity. For example, their nationality, their profession, their job, characteristics about oneself, like if they're intelligent, their height, their kind, etc. And the second use is for time and day. For example, es la una, it's 1 o'clock, or hoy es sábado, today is Saturday.
Thank you, Em, for this very good explanation and summary. And we know, Spanglish friends, if we want to retain what we've learned and these rules that we've covered for using ser versus estar, we need to put it into practice.
Absolutamente, absolutely, Val. And we're going to put all 4 uses of both ser and estar into practice. So, Spanglish friends, listen out and hear if you can catch all 4 uses of estar and ser. So let's do a real life conversation that maybe you would have if you were traveling in a Spanish speaking country.
Entonces, let's set the scene. For today's conversation, imagine Em is walking around the streets, chum, 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 in Chile, and her phone has run out of battery. Oh no, it's died.
Oh no. And yes, I need directions because I don't know what time it is, okay? So you always have to be prepared, Spanglish friends, in case our phone batteries died, to ask someone in Spanish. So I'm going to ask a señora on the street, someone I don't know on the street, played by our Profe Val, for directions. Are you ready, Profe Val?
I'm going to play the old lady, la señora. Sí, amiga. Comencemos.
Hola, señora. ¿Cómo estás?
Hola, estoy bien, gracias. ¿Necesitas ayuda?
Sí, mi nombre es Emily. Soy australiana y no hablo mucho español. Mi iPhone murió. ¿Dónde está el parque?
No te preocupes. Está allí, a 2 cuadras.
Gracias. ¿Qué hora es?
Es la 1.
Muchísimas gracias, señora. Que tengas un buen día.
Igualmente.
How How did you go, Spanglish friends? Did you start to pick up on the 4 ways we've used ser versus estar and some of those conjugations we talked about? Let's break it all down.
The first use was when M asked me, ¿Cómo estás? Which means, how are you? And I replied, estoy bien. I knew to use estoy, which is from the verb estar, as it is to do with how I was feeling, with my emotions, which was our first use of estar.
Yes, and then I went on to say, mi nombre es Emily, which we know from episode 3 means my name is. Mi nombre es. Es is that conjugation of ser. And I also said, yo soy australiana, which we mentioned earlier in the episode, where I'm saying where I'm from. I said, I am Australian. And those were the first uses of the verb ser to describe my identity, my name, my nationality. I follow this by saying, which is such an essential phrase as a beginner, no hablo mucho español, is a fail-safe expression to say, I don't speak much Spanish. I was prepping the senora for this conversation. Plus, I then told her the reason why I was approaching her. I told her my iPhone died. It's dead. It's not working. Please help.
Yeah, you can use murió and died in the same sense for these things like run out of battery. And yes, then M asked me for directions. She asked, ¿Dónde está el parque? ¿Dónde está el parque? Can you see that she used estar correctly in this case? She asked me, where is the park? This was our second use of estar for directions. Do you remember?
Then Profe Val replied, or Senora Val, I should say, replied, no te preocupes, no te preocupes, which means no worries at all. She wasn't worried that I was asking her directions and my phone had died. She was a very polite Chilean. Again, she responded with the verb estar to give me a direction. She said, está allí, está allí, which means it's over there. Again, she was using the verb estar to describe its location. She told me a 2 cuadras, which means in 2 blocks. And she said, don't worry, it's over there. Está allí en 2 cuadras. It's over there. Just go 2 blocks further.
And finally, M asked me for the time. She asked, ¿Qué hora es? Which we know means what time is it? Which is our final use of the verb ser to talk about time or ask for the time. And I replied to her, es la una. Es la una. It's 1 o'clock. Remember, friends, I need to say son las for any other time than 1 o'clock. For example, when we say son las dos, which means like 2 o'clock, or if we want to say son las tres, which means it's 3 o'clock, everything after 1, we would use son las.
Amazing job, Spanglish friends. Well done if you caught 1, 2, 3, or even all 4 uses of the verb ser and estar that we did in our conversation. Congrats to you!
This brings us to the 3 things we want you to remember from today's episode. If you have forgotten everything else, we want you to remember these 3 things, okay? Number 1, número uno, ser and estar both mean to be. We introduced estar today, which you conjugate these 3 main ways. Yo estoy, I am, tú estás, you are, and ella está, she is, or él está, he is. Number 2, número 2. The 2 main reasons you'd use estar are for emotions and directions, okay? Yo estoy bien, I am well, or yo estoy en el parque, I am at the park. And last one, number 3, número 3, the 2 main reasons you'd use ser is for identity and time. So you could say, yo soy venezolana, I am Venezuelan, and you could say, es la una, it's 1 o'clock for time.
And now, properly on to our reto, our challenge of the week. We want you to put into practice one of the uses of the verb estar that we shared today. For example, talking about either emotions or directions. You could say, estoy feliz, like I'm happy today, or you could tell us where you are right now. Estoy en mi casa, I'm in my house. Or I could say, estoy en el tren, estoy en el tren. I'm on the train. Practice describing how you're feeling or tell us where you are in this very moment in time using the verb estar. We can't wait to see your answers in the comments below.
Amazing, Em. And please tell us quickly before we go, what are we going to be diving into next episode?
All right, we are going to be building on the foundational work we did on Estar today, and we're going to be deep diving and introducing you to how you say more emotions in Spanish beyond the estoy bien. For example, I'm tired, I'm stressed, I'm bored, I'm glad, and so much more. So you can go beyond that surface level with your classmates, Spanish teacher, your family, or friends, and, get some real context to your conversation going.
Maravilloso. Wonderful. Entonces, amigos, hasta la próxima, Spanglish friends. Until next time.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. See you next time. Ciao, ciao, amigos.
Thank you for listening to Spanglish Friends. We are both so proud of the time you're investing to level up your Spanish listening and speaking skills.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, follow us and give the show a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Or even better, tell a friend about the show. It's how we can help even more people on their Spanish learning journeys and continue to grow our awesome, supportive community.
Don't forget to check out our socials, including Instagram and TikTok at Spanish_friends for even more beginner Spanish fun.
Congratulations on taking another step today towards your Spanish learning goals. Ciao, Spanglish amigos. Until next time.
Hasta la próxima, amigos.